Studentpreneur Podcast, the podcast on students who are entrepreneurs. Get motivated and keep your energy high with stories from studentpreneurs. This week's podcast is sponsored by ID Network, a network of university associations run by studentpreneurs for studentpreneurs. If you don't have an ID network in your university, reach out to idnetwork.com.au. My name is Julian Martin, entrepreneur turned PhD student. For 3 years, I've been studying students who are entrepreneurs, and I get told not to waste my time with them. They should drop out of uni, build their business, like Jobs and Gates did. Well, what those people don't know is that the first thing that Jobs did after dropping out was to hang out on campus, to learn more. So each week, I'll bring you the best of those individuals who don't want to drop their studies while running their business. I call them Studentpreneur. This week, our Studentpreneur is Christopher Drake. Hi Chris, thanks for doing the interview with me today. We are actually at ilab Accelerator in Brisbane because one of your businesses has previously gone through it. Interestingly, ilab is owned by a university, the University of Queensland. So Chris, you've done Tedx talks on student entrepreneurship, you've run a business that has turned over low six figures, and you're also studying business at the Queensland University of Technology. Previously, you studied mechanical engineering at the University of Queensland. You won StartUp Weekend in Brisbane in October with Car Values, your new business. All right, enough of an intro. Do you want to tell us more about yourself?
Sure. So I started my first business while I was at university studying mechanical engineering. And it was a mobile phone repair business. I really just fixed iPhones and smartphones for people. Since then, I have gone on and started a couple of other businesses. Mostly related to e-commerce and online marketing, but the two most recent ones are in the technology startup area. So they're essentially using technology to solve a problem rather than relying on an old school service-based business. These are both more related to technology and using tech to help solve a problem.
All right, Chris. So what got you started? Was it passion, hobby, a friend? What was it?
It was a hobby for me. So I was really interested in technology when I was studying at UQ. And I was really interested in mobile phones and laptops and just technology. So using that, I became really good at iPhones, and I got the iPhone when it first came out, and friends of mine got them, and I would jailbreak them and I would modify them, and of course that led to actually repairing them. So I kind of knew everything there was about iPhones, and I even applied for jobs at Optus and Telstra and 3 and Virgin, but never got a call back. So it wasn't until I'd been doing that for a while that I realized, hang on, people are dropping these phones and they're being cracked. I can fix them. So I did, and I would fix it for friends, and I'd fix it for other people who I just knew or friends of friends. And it wasn't until one point when I was like, oh, this is a business. This is a business now, because I can charge people to do this. I don't just have to charge them the price of the parts. I can charge them more. And at that point, Apple had opened up one Apple store, but it was like $300 to fix a screen, and I could fix them in about 15 minutes, and I think I charged about $150 or $200. So it was still somewhat cheaper than Apple, but it was also quicker and more convenient.
So what made you realize that you could charge for it? Because before you were just doing it for friends.
I think I didn't realize that I could actually charge people, and there were more people out there than just other students. And so therefore there were people who had money and could justify spending a couple of $100 on fixing a phone when basically a student couldn't. Yeah. So I think that was that point when I realized that it was actually a business, when there were other people who wanted to get it done and they weren't friends of mine.
Yeah. So after this business, you went on to others, right?
Yeah, that's right. So what I did is I used that hobby and that passion around mobile phones, and I built up the knowledge base around that, and then all I had to learn was how to do the business side. So for me, doing You Crack I Fix was very much like my mini MBA in a way. It's kind of where I learnt to run a business. It's where I learnt how to do customer service, learnt how to answer the phone, learnt how to talk properly, speak properly to people, because I'd never been exposed to it before. So those skills really just developed through uCrackIFix. It was doing web pages. So I learned how to build a web page. I learned how to do the online marketing. I learned how to convert someone over the phone. So it was like a cold call, or it was a reverse cold call, I guess people were calling me. But then I was able to transfer that to my next business, which was other e-commerce stores. And so procurement, from trying to get the parts, I could apply to a different area and import something different. And getting people to the e-commerce webpage was just the online marketing. So I built up this skill set which was able to be transferred to different areas. And I helped other friends set up businesses, and I helped them do similar stuff to what I was doing. And it was really just a transfer of those skills. And that is essentially what I have done over and over again. Use the same skill set, but shifted it slightly, learnt one or two more skills, but really had that solid foundation.
So for all of us, when we start, we just think we don't have the skills, but you have your hobby, and so you've learned from your hobby. And then for each company, you built your knowledge on top of the previous one.
Yeah, I kind of think of it like a Venn diagram. Venn diagram was my knowledge, and then the new business, some of it crossed over, but not all of it. And so I built up those skills of that vacant area in the Venn diagram. Then the next business crossed over again. And so as things started to evolve and I started to develop different businesses, I was using more and more of those skills. And so even now I use a lot of those skills that I learnt in uCrackIFix to do online marketing for my own businesses, build a web page, build a landing page, do all of that, write a nicely worded sale email, or thank you for signing up, blah, 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 blah. All of that came from uCrackIFix.
All right, Chris, what's the secret sauce? How do you balance uni and your business?
Yeah, so I was at university full-time, and I still am. I graduate in the middle of this year. So what I do personally is find units where I can directly apply the content to my business. So I will study a unit that is about sales, for example. And another one I did was actually about entrepreneurship and innovation. So I got to write a business plan and do the research and market research on a business idea. So for me personally, what I do is I try to find units which will complement the skills I have, but also develop off them and create newer skills. But I always try to do my assessment and tutorial questions, and I just relate it back to my business. So all of my assignments are about a business that I either have run or am currently running or could see myself doing in the future. So I just make everything directly applicable. And for me, that works better than sitting down and studying theory. If I can apply it, that's how I learn. If I can do it, that's how I learn. And it wasn't until the last few years when I started studying business that I realized that was the way I learn. I need to apply it. If I can't see the practical ways that I can use it, I won't learn it, and I won't pick it up, and I won't remember it.
Did you fail a few subjects on the way?
I did, mostly not in the business unit, but in the engineering. I did fail a couple of units just because I didn't have the focus required, and I wasn't able to practically apply the stuff. So now that I'm doing business instead, I found that I haven't failed anything. My GPA is pretty good, but that's only because I'm able to directly apply everything that I learn at uni back to my own business.
And for your first business, you used to run it from uni, right?
So the first business, uCrackIFix, my first customers came from uni, but it got to a point where I was actually getting the staff. So because I had built up the business to a point where people were searching for iPhone repairs Brisbane, and I was the first thing they saw, I would get phone calls. And so I would run it from home, but of course in the afternoons I would go to uni. And that was to see friends and to work on my own business, less on the fixing a phone side and more on the actual business side of getting the web page, increasing the calls, doing all of the testing and stuff. So for me, it was really about having staff, being able to be like, oh, this guy's going to come and fix it and he'll pick it up from our office. Where they thought I was coming from my workshop to pick it up, I was picking it up from their office, walking to the first year learning centre or science learning centre, setting up there, fixing a few phones, making a couple of $100, and then...
in the learning center.
Yeah. So I had it all set up in the little area, and I was just fixing them back to back. And depending on how urgently someone needed a phone, I'd either do it on the spot or I'd take it to uni and fix it there. But even now, my previous business before my current one, which is Car Values Co., Elastus, was actually supported by ilab, which is a part of UniQuest, which is also a part of the University of Queensland. Even though I am a QUT student, having essentially a place on campus means it's really easily to access resources. It's easy to access the other university campuses. So if you can have a good office space on uni, and a lot of unis now are starting to have these co-working spaces, it's really beneficial just because you don't just get that academic side, you also get the practical side.
And you get your learning from interacting with all the other student entrepreneurs as well. That's one of your main ways of learning now. But in your early days, do you remember how you learned? Like, was it books, blogs, podcasts? What was it?
Yeah, so with my hobby, I read, I just became like an expert on mobile phones. So I just went to all of the forums and contributed and read everything possible. Looking back on it now, I must have spent so much time reading stuff, but that is how I learned. Like when I first built my first web page, that's how I did it. I just followed a guide online. So it was those online resources, and because they were starting to be more easily accessible, it just made the barriers to learning so low that all you really needed was some time and focus and to sit down and just do it. And I did it once, I remembered how to do it.
Can you recommend a tool for our listeners, like a book or a podcast?
One of the best parts about running UCrackIFix was that I got to interact with all of these customers and got to speak with them and spend time just talking about business and what I was doing, and a lot of them actually helped me. And one of them suggested this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I was never much of a reader other than on the internet. So this is one of the very first books I actually finished, and it was just like, oh, that's kind of what you do. It was that different mindset of the difference between who a typical student is compared to what a business owner is, or what a typical corporate worker is compared to an entrepreneur. And it was that book that kind of opened up my mind to that. And so as much of a cliche as it is, it was a very good entry point for me. And I know a lot of people have had a similar experience. But these days now I rely mostly on podcasts, just because they're easy to listen to, audiobooks, and there's a few blogs that I will read about specific topics. The one I really enjoy is actually Tim Castell, who's a professor at UQ, and he talks a lot around innovation inside corporate, but also how it can apply to startups as well. And so his his blog, I can't remember what it's called, but his address is timcastell.org.
Okay, so you talked about the accelerator, the books and the blogs as a way to learn. But for support, who do you rely on and how do you find them?
When I first started, like I said, I relied a lot on just interactions with my customers, and I didn't realize there was this entire community of people who help entrepreneurs and people going through the same stuff. So what I ended up doing is actually ilab kind of opened my eyes to all of that. I entered into a competition at uni. There was a pitching competition, and I ended up winning that. And through that, I got into ilab and got into River City Labs, which is a co-working space in Brisbane. And it was in there that I met all of these people who are building the startup community in Brisbane. And it was those people who actually helped me. They are the ones that provided me with the resources, gave me hints, gave me tips, gave me all of like my education around startup and entrepreneurship, which was way better than reading it from a book, like actually hearing other people who have done it. And now they are the ones that I rely on. And even while I was at uni, I had a tutor who ended up becoming a mentor of mine. And for some reason, I remember asking him a question and he's like, oh, let's get coffee and talk about it. And that was the first time I met him outside of him as a tutor. And he is someone who helps me a lot. He is really the one that drives me to do everything that I do now. And anytime I have questions about anything, I just call him up and he helps. And he started as a tutor. But that entire community is something that really helps. But if you don't have someone like ilab, going to meetup groups is actually a really good start. And, spend a month just going to as many things as possible, and you'll start to see the same people over and over again, and they're the ones that you want to start spending time away from the meetup groups, but just find out where they hang out and where they...
So you mentioned your customers, you also mentioned your tutor, the people you meet at iLabs and at the competition. You also mentioned the change of mindset when you read a book. It sounds like now you hang out with people with the same mindset.
Yeah, that's right. So at the moment, as depressing as it sounds, the majority of my friends actually run their own businesses. They're identical to me. My best friend actually started working for his dad's engineering firm and then went on and started his own engineering firm because he saw that I was doing it. And now him and I are essentially doing the exact same path of trying to run our own businesses and be better at it. And we rely on not just each other from the own personal support side, because running a business can be tough. You do need people who aren't just going to give you business advice, but actually personal support, like, how do you feel today? What can I help with? Because it can be tiring and it can be exhausting, and you want a big enough community that knows how to deal with that.
And you want people who understand what you're going through, like versus professors or friends who are simply trying to get a degree and can't really relate with you.
That's right. So I find it's really important at university to make it very clear why you're at university when you speak with lecturers. So sometimes they will adjust your units and your assessment.
Well, that's when you're lucky, right?
But you need to be at that point where you're confident enough in going up to them and saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. This is what I do. For me, I want to apply everything I do to my own business. I don't want it just to be theoretical. Can you help me change this assessment item so it is not unfair to other people, but I still get something out of it?" And a lot of the time I find they're very, very accommodating if you're upfront about it, rather than trying to be like, "Oh, I don't want to do this assessment."
All right, so we've heard a couple of good stories. Do you want to share with us your tough times as an entrepreneur now?
Yeah, sure. So after I did uCrack iFix, I started creating e-commerce stores for people and doing online marketing. And I did that by myself for a while, a year or two. And it wasn't not super successful. I got enough business from it, just, it was like pocket money on the side other than uCrack iFix, because at that point it was interesting. And I met one guy who actually I originally met because I fixed his phone. He said, we could actually turn this into a proper business and start creating web page and doing digital marketing.
Great.
Yeah, that's right. It was awesome. Because I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I can have a business partner and do that. So what we ended up doing was, we set the company up and we did all the company structure and we did everything we were meant to do, and we had our marketing plan and we had all of this nonsense. And it took months and months and months. And every time I was kind of the tech side, even though I'm not a developer, I was still able to manage a team overseas to create these web pages. And he was like the sales side. So he was going to get the sales and then I was going to build it. So he would start with the first half, I would deal with the end half.
Great combination.
Yeah, that's right. It seemed like the perfect mix. But as time went on, he was always saying, "Oh, the web page isn't perfect," or "We haven't got our branding," or "I haven't got an iPad so I can show what our web pages do to people." And there was just like, it never wasn't, what I realize now is he was making excuses not to go out and actually get some sales. And at the time, I didn't realize that that's what was happening. I thought this is just what real businesses do, without realizing that there is actually another way to do it, which is to do your market validation up front and find customers beforehand. So really what we should have done is we both should have gone out and had an order of 5 web pages, given them somewhat of a discount and said we'd have it done in a month. And then once we'd done that, then set up the business. Use that money to set up the business rather than putting in our own money to set it up. And then essentially I ended up having to buy him out and I ended up making more sales. He had lots of sales in the pipeline, but not one of them, nothing closed. And the ones he did sell were people he knew. So they weren't even real, and he wasn't even able to close them. So I ended up having to do the front end and the back end and everything. So I should have just done it by myself in the first place.
So what have you learned from that? That you can only work by yourself?
No, definitely not. No, I'm working with other people at the moment. And it's so good when you work with other people. Just stuff gets done so much quicker. And if you have an opportunity to work with people, even just do it as a project first and see if it works out and see if you can actually find out what type of people and what their work ethic is like, because you don't want to commit to being in a founding team with someone before you've actually done something with them. But not just that, it's do your market validation, and that's vitally important. Go and interview your potential customers, find out what their pain points are, find what their needs are, and make sure you're building something that will solve their problems. For us in the web page design business, it was, sure, we were solving people's problems, but we were just like, we can sell this. I can make a pretty web page, but so can 50,000 other people.
Simple and basic, but sometimes you have to go through it to understand its value, right?
Oh yeah, so now anytime I start a business, the first thing I do is I think about the business canvas, business model, and just kind of do a rough notes of that, and then think, all right, what out of this thing is the riskiest part? And then I go and I test that, and I use validation boards and things like that to test those parts. So find out you are actually solving a problem that people are willing to pay for. And there's lots of research and blog posts and information out there that will help you identify that a bit more.
Yeah, you're referring to the Lean Startup from Steve Blank, right?
Yeah, Steve Blank has a great tool set, and especially if you're a student and you want to write assignments about customer discovery and market validation, Steve Blank has some really well-written articles that articulate exactly, like he puts a lot of effort into it, and he articulates exactly those theories are. You will need to go and find resources to back up what he is saying, and a lot of it starts with co-creation theories and just market research theories. But the way he applies those is, I think, what makes his toolkit so fantastic.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. It's been really good to have you on Studentpreneur Podcast. Before we leave, is there something that you need? Like, what do you want the people who are listening to do? Do you have a Twitter account or something?
Yeah, so if you could just follow me on Twitter. I think my Twitter handle is Christopher_87. So just find me on Twitter, and I'll happy to chat to you if you want to talk a bit more about how I can help you. I'm very passionate about helping student entrepreneurs go and start their own business. Even if you want some help with how to do customer interviews and stuff like that, I'm happy to help with that. But also, if I think Idea Network is sponsoring this podcast, right? So yeah, if you haven't got an Idea Network at your university and you want to start one, go to ideanetwork.com and fill out the form. Idea Network is something that will help you with a lot of learnings, is really what Idea Network is about. How can you build a business? And we try to build a community of people who have done it before and are willing to help each other. So follow me on Twitter, connect with me on LinkedIn, but make sure you write in who you are. And yeah, hopefully we can build awesome stuff.
Right. Time for a quick wrap up. Each studentpreneur story is different, and what works for some people doesn't for others. However, I'd like to point out a few things in Chris' journey that are similar to a lot of studentpreneurs that I have interviewed for my research. He started from a hobby, playing with fixing iPhones. He engaged with different communities to help him progress, not knowingly at the beginning, like talking to his customers, but then on purpose with meetups, Idea Network, the ilab accelerator, competitions, and of course, very important, a mentor. This is all part of changing mindset. So if you don't know what to do, go on meetup.com and search for meetups around you and just go. Thank you so much for your time, Chris, and all the best in your adventure. If you enjoy this podcast, please review us on iTunes, and I'll thank you in upcoming episodes. Catch our next podcast on Wednesday next week, and keep breaking the stereotype.